At exactly 3 a.m., I woke up to 79 withdrawal alerts. My savings account emptied. $3.2 million gone. My son told me if I still wanted a roof over my head, I should keep quiet and sign the house papers. I sat there in the dark, hands trembling, wondering how a child I raised alone could treat me like a burden. But maybe this betrayal came at the perfect time. When everything falls apart, what if it's the moment you finally start fighting back? It was 3:02 a.m. when the first buzz jolted me awake, then the second, then a relentless stream of pings that lit up my nightstand like a slot machine. 79 alerts. Every one of them said the same thing: withdrawal successful, withdrawal successful, withdrawal successful. I blinked hard, sat up and stared at my phone. $3.2 million. That was all I had. And now it was gone. The bedroom was cold, my hands shook. For a long moment, I just sat there, the glow of the screen casting a pale light across the room. Then the final message came in. It was from Brent. If you still want a roof over your head, sign the papers and keep quiet. I remember gripping the phone tighter than I should have. My fingers hurt, but I didn't loosen my hold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Not this time. I just sat there, breathing. One inhale, one exhale, then again. By the time the sun came up, I had already made coffee, dressed, and laid out the folder I kept hidden in the pantry behind the old cereal boxes. The one labeled, "Emergency, open only if they try me." I never thought I'd need it. I never wanted to believe my son would turn on me like this. But here we were. By 7:45 a.m., Brent and Kaylee showed up without warning. No knock, no good morning. Just the jingle of keys and the door swinging open like they owned the place. Kaylee strolled into my kitchen in yoga pants and a sweatshirt that probably cost more than my entire outfit. She looked around like she was already planning what she'd redecorate. Brent tossed a manila envelope on the table. "Just sign these," he said flatly. "We've already set everything up. It's a refinance, low risk. We'll handle the payments. You won't have to worry about anything. Just need your signature." I didn't look at the papers, not yet. "Where's the money?" I asked, even though I already knew. He smirked, pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. Kaylee leaned against the counter, arms crossed, chewing her gum like this was a casual conversation. "We moved it. It's better off invested. You always said you didn't know what to do with all that money. We're helping you make the most of it." That was my retirement, my life savings. Every dime your father and I put away over 40 years. Kaylee snorted. "You mean the money just sitting there in a CD like a dusty old can of soup? We're doing you a favor." I looked at Brent. "You took it without asking." "We didn't take it. We redirected it. It's still in the family." No apology, no shame, just entitlement thick as concrete. I glanced at the papers on the table. Bold letters across the top. Home equity line of credit. They were trying to put a lien on the house. Not for my sake. For theirs. For whatever new business scheme Brent had cooked up and Kaylee co-signed. Brent leaned forward. His voice dropped. "If you don't sign, we'll have to do this the hard way. And trust me, you don't want that. You'll lose more than just a house. You'll lose everything. Even this. Respect you think people owe you." I saw red, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I stood up, walked over to the coffee pot, and poured myself another cup. The same way I used to when he was 10 and whining about not getting his way. "I won't be signing anything today," Kaylee scoffed. "You're being dramatic." I looked her dead in the eye. "And you're being very stupid." They left 10 minutes later, but not before Brent gave one last warning. "You're lucky we're still offering this deal. Don't test me." The door slammed. I locked it behind them. Not just the deadbolt. I installed the second latch I kept in the drawer since last summer. Quiet hands, no hesitation. To anyone listening right now, maybe you've been through something like this. Maybe your own child looked at you not as a mother, but as a transaction. Maybe they forgot what sacrifice tastes like. But let me tell you this. When someone pushes you far enough, even the quietest woman will start to prepare. And I had just started. Because the next time they walked through that door, they'd wish they never had. Not because I'd scream, not because I'd beg, but because I'd be ready. Every signature, every transfer, every move they made, I would turn it against them. And the sweetest part was, they wouldn't even see it coming. Stay with me. You're going to want to hear how this ends. By 8:30 a.m., I was already outside the local branch of Mercer Federal, standing beneath the dull grey awning as the manager unlocked the front doors. I didn't wait for a greeting. I walked in with my chin high, folder in hand, and asked for Evan Pike. He showed up in less than 2 minutes. The look on his face shifted the moment he saw mine. He knew something was wrong. I didn't waste time. "They touched the trust account," I said flatly. He blinked, then motioned me into a private consultation room. As soon as the door closed behind us, I dropped the folder on the desk and opened it. There were 79 unauthorized withdrawals from my personal account, all routed through a shell LLC I never approved, registered under the name Breakmont Group. I traced it to an address registered to Kaylee Hollis. Evan sat down slowly, already reaching for his laptop. "They accessed both the checking and savings lines," I continued. "I need a freeze, now, and I want a transaction recall process initiated immediately." He started typing. Fast, his fingers tapping out the code of a man trying to catch a falling knife. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence stretch while he worked, and when he glanced up, I could tell it was worse than he expected. "They moved the bulk in under 12 minutes, he muttered. "Most went to crypto-backed high-risk short-term lending nodes, some into a merchant service account under that LLC. I'll begin recall, but you know there's a limited time window." "I know. I also know you're not just a bank manager. You're the same Evan I coached through senior year when your mum got sick. So don't give me the default script. Do what's possible." He gave a short nod. "Yes, ma'am." While he worked, I pulled out the second document, a copy of my property title with a printed notice from the county registrar, a pending lien request filed the night before under the name of Breakmont Group. Brent and Kaylee weren't just draining my accounts. They were trying to collateralize the house, too. "I want that lien blocked," I said. "That's a matter for the county," Evan replied, his voice tight. "But if you've got proof of fraud, I can help initiate an alert on title activity. It'll put a hold on any transfer attempts." I signed whatever he slid across the table. My handwriting was calm, steady. The adrenaline had burned away the panic. All that was left was cold, clean resolve. By 9:10 a.m., I was in the office of Leah Winters, community legal advocate, small office near City Hall. I knew her from 2 fundraisers years ago, back when her mother and I volunteered at the same shelter. Leah didn't ask for small talk. "They moved your funds using falsified documents," she said after reading through the folder. "And they're leveraging an identity manipulation clause from a power of attorney Brent slipped in a year ago. You remember signing anything like that?" I remember Brent bringing me a health insurance renewal packet last summer. Said it was Medicare supplemental paperwork. I signed it without reading. "That's where he buried the authorization," she said. "Classic embedded clause tactic, hidden in plain sight." "What can we do?" I can start the motion to revoke the POA and file for injunctive relief on the property lien. But the best weapon right now is visibility. We bring this to light, make them accountable in public before they bury you in more paper. I nodded. Then we bring it to light. Do you have witnesses? People who've seen how they treat you? Better, I said. I've got neighbors who lent them money and never saw it again. Leah's eyes lit up like someone handed her a loaded camera at a crime scene. Good. We'll start there. By 10:30 a.m., I had sent 3 text messages, one to Mrs. Dupree, who ran the neighborhood council, one to Angelo, who Brent owed $6,000 for a busted renovation job, and one to Sharon, who once caught Kaylee switching out price tags at a boutique charity sale. The replies came in fast. We've been waiting for this. Tell us where to be. Leah prepared a formal document for County Title Services, citing suspected fraud and requesting an immediate freeze pending legal review. Evan sent confirmation that the account was locked and recall procedures were underway, though no promises could be made. At noon, I returned home. The house was quiet, like it had exhaled after a long-held breath. I moved through it slowly, checking windows, doors, locks. Reinforced the side entrance, took down the spare key under the garden rock. I set up the printer, scanned all documents into 2 encrypted folders, and saved them across 3 USBs. One went in my purse, one into my bank safety box. One I slid into a manila envelope labeled, "Open if I go quiet." By 12:45 p.m., a courier arrived at the front door, envelope in hand. It was from Brent. Inside was another set of papers, even more aggressive than before. This time, it wasn't just a refinance request. It was a quitclaim deed. They wanted me to sign the entire property over to Breakmont Group. No discussion, no conditions, just surrender. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I picked up the envelope, carried it to the backyard grill, lit a match, and burned it, 1 page at a time. That afternoon, I placed a call to Mrs. Dupree. "I'm requesting a neighborhood council emergency session," I said. "We haven't done one since the flood in 2012, she replied. "Well," I said, watching the last of the smoke curl from the fire pit, "I think this might be bigger." She didn't ask for details. Meeting confirmed. Tonight at 7. I hung up and went inside to change. By 6:45 p.m., my folder was reorganized, printed, indexed, color-coded. By 7 o'clock p.m., and I would be standing in front of 27 people, neighbors, witnesses, former friends of Brent, tired eyes who had given too much to people who gave nothing back. And for the first time in years, I felt no fear, only calculation, cold and clean, the kind that comes when a woman knows she's got the truth, and that soon the whole world will know it too. By 6:58 p.m., the folding chairs had been arranged in a tight semicircle on Mrs. Dupree's driveway. A plastic folding table sat at the front, draped with a blue tablecloth, and the neighborhood bulletin board leaned against the garage door, covered in flyers from the past 3 months. A single fluorescent lamp buzzed above, casting a harsh white light across everyone's faces. I stood behind the table, holding a clipboard and a stack of documents. Brent and Kaylee weren't here, not yet. That was fine. This wasn't for them. This was for the people who had lived on this street for 2, 3, even 4 decades. The people who had given Brent odd jobs, trusted him with keys, lent him money, vouched for him. Now they were here because I asked, not out of pity, not even out of loyalty, but because deep down they had seen something, and they were ready to name it. Mrs. Dupree called the meeting to order. No small talk, no gossip, just the agenda, community concern regarding potential fraud, abuse of trust, and protection of neighborhood integrity. I took a breath, then began. Yesterday morning, 79 withdrawals were made from my savings account. The total was over $3 million. The transfers were directed to a company that does not exist on paper in any legitimate capacity. That company is controlled by Brent and Kaylee Hollis. Murmurs. Not loud, but pointed. I pressed forward. I have confirmed with my bank that they used a hidden clause in a falsified power of attorney to initiate the withdrawals. They also filed a lien application on my home, without my knowledge, through a shell LLC. Their intention was to leverage the equity for personal gain. I laid out the evidence, a printed screenshot of the bank activity, the document from the county recorder's office showing the lien request, the notarized affidavit from Evan confirming the alerts were raised from internal fraud detection systems. Then I passed around the names, not numbers, names, of every person in that circle who had either lent Brent money, co-signed a car, or helped him out of some bind. Angelo raised his hand, not waiting to be called on. $6 grand, he said. He said it was for fixing their garage door after a break-in. I gave it in cash. Never saw a receipt. Never saw him again either. Sharon spoke next. They used my boutique's tax ID to apply for a business grant. I didn't even know until I got audited. I thought it was a mistake. Maggie, who rarely spoke at these meetings, leaned forward. I drove Kaylee to a notary once. She said it was for a car title transfer. I remember because she used my phone to check an address. That same number is listed on this document. I looked around the circle, letting the weight of their own connections settle in. This isn't about me being their mother. This is about a pattern, one that started small and private, and now they've taken it to a level that threatens not just my home, but this community's reputation, our trust. Then I played the audio, a short clip. From the morning they came into my kitchen, Brent's voice, sharp and cold. If you still want a roof over your head, sign the papers and keep quiet. The room fell silent. I paused the recording. They think no one will stop them. They think being family protects them from consequence. I'm here to prove otherwise. Mrs. Dupree cleared her throat. This council will draft a letter to the county recorder's office in support of your fraud claim. We will also sign a statement as a witness group, should this go to court. No objections, not one. At 7:31 p.m., I left that meeting with 26 signatures and 3 notarized testimonies. Leah was waiting in her car down the street. I handed her the documents through the window. We've got momentum, she said, flipping through them. They won't know what hit them. I nodded once, then turned and walked back to my house. By 8:10 p.m., Brent pulled into my driveway, alone. He didn't bother knocking. He used his copy of the key. I stood in the hallway as he walked in like nothing had happened. You had no right to embarrass us like that, he said. I didn't answer. I just watched him as he paced the living room. His hands were twitching, his jaw clenched. We were handling things. You turned this into a circus. You think you're smart, dragging the neighbors into it. I stepped forward. You signed my name without consent. You moved my money. You filed fraudulent documents. And you did all of it because you assumed I wouldn't fight back. He laughed, but it was forced. It's still your name on the accounts, Mum. You can scream and wave paper all you want, but you're the one who looks senile, emotional, irrational. They'll see that. I stared at him, quiet. Then I picked up a thin black folder from the hallway table and handed it to him. Inside was a notice of revocation of power of attorney, certified copies of the fraud filings, and a letter from Leah's office addressed to him and Kaylee. He flipped through it. Each page made his face pale. This isn't going to stick, he said, his voice thinner than before. Kaylee's already meeting with a new investor. We've got other options. You can't block all of them. I didn't flinch. He threw the folder onto the couch. You're making a mistake. Then he walked out. No slamming doors this time. Just silence. I waited until his car was gone, before I went back into the living room and picked up the folder, put it back in the cabinet under lock. And then I called the notary. Because the next day, I would file the emergency injunction with the county. And by the time Brent realized what that meant, the door to his future would already be shut. Tightly. From my side. By 8 a.m. the next morning, I was already parked in front of the county registrar's office. I didn't wait in the car. I didn't rehearse anything. I walked in with my folder tucked under my arm and the notice of revocation printed on official letterhead. Every document was notarized, time-stamped, backed by legal precedent. I had spent the night memorizing the exact statute Leah cited in her injunction request. The clerk behind the counter scanned the first page and looked up at me with a polite but distant smile. You're filing for injunction against a pending lien transfer? Yes, I said, handing over the next set. And here's the request to void the power of attorney, along with documentation proving financial abuse by the listed agent. She flipped through the pages slowly, nodding. You'll need to submit this through expedited review. There's a fee. I'm prepared to pay it, I said, and reached for my checkbook. By 8:47 a.m., the paperwork had been submitted, stamped, and escalated to the registrar's desk. From there, it would trigger a county-wide freeze on any transaction involving my property for 72 hours. That was long enough. Long enough to detonate the next piece. At 9:10 a.m., I walked into my bank for the second time in 2 days. Evan greeted me without a word and led me straight to his office. I dropped a new folder on his desk. They're still trying to work through the merchant account, I said. The LLC is now routing payments through an external processor in Delaware. You should have flagged it already. He opened the file. His jaw set. They're rushing, he said, trying to outpace the system. They're desperate, which makes them sloppy, I answered. Evan typed quickly. I'll send it up. But Maeve, once this gets flagged at the federal level, it's going to spiral. You ready for that? I'm not looking to punish them, Evan. I'm looking to stop them. And if stopping them is what ruins them, I didn't blink. Then they should have stopped themselves. By 10:20 a.m., I was seated across from a real estate fraud investigator from the county's Office of Elder Protection. Leah had arranged the meeting through her network. The investigator, a woman named Dorsey, didn't waste time on introductions. She got right to it. Explain how the false POA was introduced. I walked her through the health insurance paperwork from last summer, how Brent had slipped it in among the forms. I gave her the copy of my signature, how it matched nothing else I had signed. I included a sworn affidavit from my doctor verifying I was of sound mind and memory at the time. And they filed for lien authorization less than 48 hours after the withdrawals. 32, I corrected. They weren't even pretending to delay. Dorsey nodded and started drafting the initial complaint. This will trigger a preliminary inquiry. You'll need to remain available for follow-up. But based on what I'm seeing, it won't take long before this hits the district review board. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Neither are they. By noon, the sky was heavy with summer heat, the kind that made asphalt shimmer and slowed every breath. But I didn't feel the heat. I was too focused, too cold. I returned home to find a car parked at the edge of my driveway. Kaylee. She wasn't wearing her usual polished outfit. Her hair was pulled back into a hasty bun, and her shoes looked like she'd slipped them on without looking. She was standing beside the mailbox, arms crossed. I didn't stop walking. I opened the front door and held it wide. "If you want to say something," I said, "say it from the porch." She marched up the steps without hesitation. "You think this little game is going to end well for you?" she asked. "No, I think it's going to end," I replied. "That's all I care about." "You just embarrassed your family in front of everyone on that block." "You embarrassed yourselves," I said calmly. "I just gave you the audience you deserve." She stepped closer. "You've made Brent look like a con artist." "I didn't make him look like anything," I said. "He did that all on his own." For a moment she hesitated. I saw it. The flicker of doubt. The tiny crack in the mask. Then she laughed. "You're not the victim here, Maeve. You're just an old woman who didn't adapt." I leaned against the doorframe, unmoved. "And you're the one who thought I wouldn't fight back." She turned and walked back down the steps, muttering something I didn't catch. I watched her leave without a word. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I went back inside and checked the camera. Every word had been recorded. By 2:00 p.m., Leah and I were back on the phone. I forwarded the footage. She laughed once, dryly. "She's unraveling." "She was never stitched up to begin with," I said. Leah cleared her throat. "Next step is the press. We've got 3 local outlets interested. One runs a series on financial abuse in elder communities. You ready to go public?" "Yes." "And Brent?" "He already went public when he forged my name." At 3:15 p.m., I sent out 10 emails, each to contacts in the local homeowners association, the Community Watch, and 3 small business owners Brent had borrowed from. Attached to each email was a timeline, bank statements, legal documents, and a simple line at the end. "They tried to erase me. Now they get to be seen." By 4:00 p.m., the phone started ringing. By 4:20 p.m., Brent called. I didn't answer. By 4:42 p.m., a message came through from an unknown number, a screenshot of a text Brent had sent to one of his investors. In it, he blamed everything on Kaylee. Said she misled him. Said he never saw the paperwork. By 5:00 p.m., the cracks were visible, and I hadn't even started the real damage yet. The boulder was still at the top of the hill, but I was standing behind it, both hands on the stone. One push. That's all it was going to take. By 6:30 a.m. the next morning, I was already dressed, seated at the kitchen table with my laptop open and 3 documents printed, clipped, and lined up with military precision. The coffee was still hot. I hadn't slept. Not really. I didn't need rest. I needed results. Leah texted first. The injunction had cleared the registrar's internal legal check. The lien was frozen. Brent and Kaylee wouldn't be able to touch the house unless they tried to break the law in broad daylight. But that wasn't the finish line. That was only the lock. Now came the key. I started with the presentation. A short deck, 5 slides. Title: Protecting Property, Preserving Integrity. It sounded like a neighborhood watch safety session. That was the point. Keep it clean. Keep it official. But every slide would show the truth. Real transaction receipts, dates, signatures, paper trails, not a single word of opinion, just documented reality. At 8:00 a.m., I called Angelo. "I need your statement printed and signed." He didn't hesitate. "You want it emailed or dropped off?" "Both." By 8:15 a.m., his scanned affidavit was in my inbox. Brent had taken $6,000 from him under false pretenses, then ghosted him for 3 months. Signed and dated. Angelo had nothing left to protect. Brent had already burned the bridge. At 9:00 a.m., Sharon sent over her report. The business tax ID theft, screenshots of the IRS audit letter, even a voicemail from Kaylee, panicked and vague, claiming it had all been a mix-up with accounting. Every detail came together fast. Everyone who'd once held their tongue was now ready to speak. At 10:45 a.m., Mrs. Dupree called. She had printed copies of the signed witness list from the emergency council meeting. All 26 names. She had also invited 3 other residents who hadn't attended, but now wanted to submit separate letters. The ripple was spreading. By 11:30 a.m., I was sitting in front of Leah again. Her office smelled like lemon disinfectant and quiet vengeance. She stapled the last of the statements and locked them in a thick legal folder. "You've got more firepower than most civil trials walk in with," she said. "One more piece and we're ready to go public." I nodded. "The bank acknowledgement?" She opened her drawer and pulled out the notarized confirmation. Evan's signature at the bottom. Internal fraud confirmed. Transaction recall pending. It was official. "All right," she said. "What's next?" I looked her straight in the eye. "We go public, and we make sure Brent and Kaylee are standing right in the middle when it explodes." At 1:00 p.m., I called Mrs. Dupree again and requested another meeting. Not on her driveway this time. The community center. A formal venue. Printed flyers, sign-in sheets, speaker list. She agreed instantly. "Title? Elder Protection and Financial Vigilance," I said. She laughed. "Very neutral." It only sounds that way. I spent the next hour finalizing the slide deck. Clean formatting. Fonts large enough for anyone over 60 to read without squinting. I printed enough for 30 copies, each stapled, hole-punched, and labeled. By 2:30 p.m., I was outside the community center with my materials stacked in a rolling bin. Inside, volunteers were already setting up chairs, a projector screen, and a refreshment table. Leah arrived with her briefcase and a stack of blank affidavits, in case anyone else wanted to join the testimony. The word was spreading faster than we'd predicted. At 3:15 p.m., I got the message I had been waiting for. Brent and Kaylee had just posted a new video on social media, a soft focus apology. They looked tired, dressed in casual clothes, sitting on a beige couch with a vase of fake flowers in the background. Brent spoke first. "We're just a young couple trying to support a dream. Sometimes that means making hard choices. But we love our family, we respect our elders." Kaylee nodded, eyes wide, voice trembling. "We're sorry for the misunderstanding. Things were taken out of context. There's a lot of noise right now, but we're still standing by our truth." No admission, no accountability, just vague sentiment and image management. By 3:30 p.m., I had downloaded the video, clipped the section that mattered most, and added it to the final slide of my presentation. Label: their version. At 4:00 p.m., the room was full. 31 people, seated in rows, some with printed copies of the deck, others holding notepads. Evan sat in the back. Angelo stood near the door with crossed arms. Sharon sat next to Mrs. Dupree, her purse open with a pen resting inside. Leah stepped up first and opened with a short statement. "We are here today not to accuse. We are here to reveal." Then she handed me the mic. I didn't stumble. I didn't stall. Slide 1. Financial records, withdrawals, routing numbers. Brent's fingerprints on every transaction. Slide 2. Property lien application. Forged power of attorney. Documentation from the county recorder's office. Slide 3. Witness statements. Angelo's loan. Sharon's audit. The timeline. Slide 4. The truth. The audio recording. Brent's threat in my kitchen, his exact words, played out loud, no editing. Slide 5. Their version. The video. Their soft-spoken non-apology played without commentary. I closed the laptop. This is the difference between silence and survival, I said. They counted on shame. They counted on me being quiet. But now everyone sees them. That's more than punishment. That's justice. The room was silent, not out of politeness, out of recognition. Mrs. Dupree stood and placed her signed statement in Leah's briefcase. Then Sharon, then 3 others, one by one. A line formed, no one rushed, no one hesitated. By 5 p.m., I walked out of that building with 31 statements, 1 full media packet, a complete timeline, and video proof. The next morning, the story would be on every local news site. Headline: Son and daughter-in-law accused of exploiting elderly mother in financial power play. Subheader: Community unites to stop abuse, hidden in plain sight. And that was only the beginning. By 7:45 a.m. the next day, the news article was everywhere, front page of the local community feed, reposted by neighborhood Facebook groups, shared by the local high school principal. It wasn't sensational, it was sharp. Facts, timestamps, quotes from Leah, and 3 anonymous testimonies that painted the same pattern. I didn't write a word of it, but I didn't need to. The truth spoke loud enough. By 8 a.m., Evan called. His voice was low and tight. "You need to see this," he said. A link popped up in my inbox before we even hung up. It was a video uploaded by Kaylee. No edits this time. No soft lighting. It was her, sitting in a parked car, face tight with fury. "They're trying to ruin us," she said. "This is not elder abuse. This is manipulation from someone who refuses to let go of control. Brent has done nothing wrong. He was managing things. She didn't even know how to log into her own accounts." I watched the video twice. She wasn't denying the transfers. She wasn't even trying to hide what they'd done. She was reframing it, painting herself and Brent as victims of a bitter, confused woman who'd turned a family disagreement into a public circus. I didn't react. I forwarded it to Leah. At 9:15 a.m., my front doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Dupree. She held a copy of the morning paper in one hand and a small portable speaker in the other. "They're calling around," she said, "trying to convince people the whole thing's exaggerated. But I thought you might want to hear this." She pressed play. A recorded phone call. Brent's voice, talking to one of the neighborhood men who'd signed the witness list. "Look," Brent said, "you don't want to be dragged into this. Just say you were misinformed. You can always tell them you never meant to get involved. My lawyer says this won't go far. But we've got receipts, too. If it gets ugly, we're going to protect ourselves." Mrs. Dupree stopped the recording and looked at me. Her mouth was a flat line. "They're cornered," I said. "And now they're clawing in circles." By 11:15 a.m., Leah confirmed what I already suspected. Kaylee had attempted to contact the registrar's office with a statement claiming the lien freeze was based on falsified information. She'd used a secondary attorney to try and bypass the flagged record. It didn't work, but it showed their desperation. Leah had already contacted the County Fraud Task Force. She said the investigator, Dorsey, was reviewing everything now and planned to escalate it by end of week. At noon, I printed 3 new copies of the video transcript, matched it with the original bank documentation, and labeled the folder Media Response B. I wasn't interested in feeding the fire, but I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. Every time they pushed, I pushed back harder. At 1:30 p.m., Kaylee showed up again. This time she didn't wait on the curb. She walked straight to the porch and pounded on the door like she was owed something. I didn't answer. I let the doorbell camera record every word. "You think this is going to end well for you," she said through clenched teeth. "You're burning down your own family." She paused, like she expected me to speak. I didn't. "You've lost your mind, Maeve. You think they care about you now. These people, the ones clapping in those little meetings. They're going to move on, and you'll still be alone, just like always." She stepped back, spit on the porch, and stormed off. By 2:15 p.m., I had uploaded the footage into my backup drive, sent it to Leah, and added it to the log. Every piece mattered now, not for court, for protection, for precision. At 3 p.m., Evans sent another update. "The Breakmont Group merchant account has been frozen. Federal compliance flagged the routing structure. Kaylee's name is all over it." Then, 10 minutes later, the second message came in. "Investor funds were tied into the account. There's going to be fallout." By 4 p.m., I knew what that meant. The people Brent had promised profits to, those quiet backers who never asked questions, were now looking for answers. The kind with numbers, the kind with accountability. Brent had built a fantasy on borrowed names and fake paperwork. Now the pillars were crumbling, and the weight was too much. I didn't lift a hand. I didn't have to. At 5:15 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, just once. The voice on the other end was shaking. "This is Jorge. I was one of the silent partners. He said you'd approved it all, that you were part of the paperwork." I didn't reply. I waited. "I just want to say, if this goes to court, I'll cooperate. I don't want to be dragged down in this." "You already are," I said calmly. "But that doesn't mean you can't climb out." At 6 p.m., I got a final confirmation. Dorsey had filed the escalation. Brent and Kaylee were now officially subjects in an active financial exploitation investigation. Their names flagged across all county transactions. They wouldn't be able to move money, property, or documents without a compliance review. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the pine trees. No wine, no celebration, just stillness. Because the loudest victories never come with cheers. They come with silence, with restraint, with the certainty that the damage is already done. And by then, the only question left for Brent and Kaylee wasn't whether they'd pay the price. It was how soon. By 7:10 a.m., I was sitting in Leah's car outside the courthouse annex, reviewing the final statement package for submission. The folder was thicker now. New affidavits had come in overnight, including one from a local notary who claimed Kaylee had pressured her into signing without full identification. It wasn't just reckless anymore. It was criminal. Leah handed me a hard copy of the filing. "This is it. Once we deliver this, it triggers automatic review by the district attorney's office," she said. I signed the final page. Not with pride, with precision. At 8 a.m., the documents were officially submitted. The clerk didn't ask questions. The name on the complaint spoke for itself. Brent Hollis, Kaylee Hollis, Breakmont Group, LLC. All tied to suspected financial fraud, elder abuse, and intentional misrepresentation. Leah placed a small red tag on the folder and slid it across the counter. "We don't walk back from this," she said. "I didn't come this far to turn around," I replied. By 9 a.m., we were at the offices of the local Channel 5 affiliate. The producer had reached out the night before, asking for permission to air a segment on financial abuse, using my story as the centerpiece. I agreed, on one condition. The facts stayed factual. No spin, no softened edges. They agreed. The interview was fast, a clear-cut walkthrough. Leah joined me for the legal context, but I carried most of it myself. I spoke directly, no tears, no guilt, just the timeline, the money, the forged documents, the neighbors who stepped up, the system that worked when it was challenged. At 10:20 a.m., the producer showed us the preview cut. I approved it with a nod. "Prime slot," he said, "runs at 6 tonight." "Let it run," I told him. "Let them watch it in silence." By 11:15 a.m., I was back home, organizing the copies for the press kit Leah would drop off to the district office. As I slid the last sheet into the folder, my phone buzzed. Evan. "They're here," he said. I stood still. "Brent and Kaylee just showed up at the branch," he continued. "They're asking questions about your account access. Security has been alerted. No breach, but you should know. They're panicking." "They should be," I said. "Thank you for the heads up." By noon, I had confirmation from Leah that the county's Elder Protection Task Force had scheduled a formal in-person interview with both Brent and Kaylee for the following morning. Not optional, not informal. An official interrogation with legal implications, and they didn't even know it yet. At 1:15 p.m., Brent showed up at my house. He parked crooked in the driveway, left the engine running, and didn't bother knocking. Just stood on the porch and pounded on the door with the side of his fist. I opened it. His face was red, jaw clenched, eyes wild. "You really want to destroy everything," he said. "You think this makes you look strong. It just makes you look spiteful." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. "You think people respect you now," he continued. "They're watching this whole thing blow up and they're laughing at us. Not at me. At you." "You came here to blame me for the choices you made," I said, voice steady. "You signed documents in my name. You moved money without permission. You filed fraudulent claims with the county. I didn't ruin you. You did." He stepped forward, close enough for me to smell the sweat on his collar. I didn't move. "You think this is over," he hissed. "You don't even know what's coming." "I know exactly what's coming," I said. I reached into the side table drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope, and held it up. "This is being delivered to the district office in the morning. It contains the full record of what you've done. Bank statements, title records, witness reports, even video. If you think I've already burned it all down, you haven't seen anything yet." He stared at the envelope like it might catch fire in his hands. Then, for the first time since this started, he took a step back. He didn't say another word. He turned around, walked back to his car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the driveway like a teenager running from a bad decision. By 2:00 p.m., Channel 5 aired the promo for the segment. My face wasn't in the clip, but my voice was. The last line of the teaser echoed through the speakers like a knife slicing through velvet. "I didn't raise a son to steal from me, but I'm not letting that stop me from stopping him now." At 2:45 p.m., Brent's name started trending on the local Twitter feed. An anonymous thread laid out the Breakmont Group timeline in chilling detail. Receipts, screenshots, even internal emails. Leah said she didn't leak it, neither did I, which meant someone inside the group finally decided to cut their losses. By 3:30 p.m., Kaylee posted another video. This one was shorter, angrier. She called the news story biased, called the legal filings slander, said the entire thing was part of a vendetta from a bitter old woman too afraid of losing control. But no one cared anymore. No one believed her. The comments were brutal. People shared their own stories, their own parents who'd been manipulated, drained, discarded. The story had gone from personal to public. And in that transformation, it became bigger than revenge. It became a warning. By 4:45 p.m., Leah texted one word. Confirmed. The district attorney had approved preliminary review of the case, full legal investigation pending. Civil suits could follow. Brent and Kaylee were no longer just names on a screen. They were case numbers. And for the first time in a very long time, I sat down at my kitchen table, folded my hands, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. Not because it was over, but because the storm had finally changed direction, and I wasn't the one standing in its path anymore. By 7:20 a.m. the next day, I stood at the counter of the records office, holding a sealed, legal envelope. The clerk took one look at the red flag on the upper corner and waved me through without a question. This wasn't routine. This wasn't a slow-burn civil dispute anymore. The documents I carried were part of a formal escalation. At 8 o'clock a.m., Leah met me outside the Office of Land and Property Records. She had her own copy in hand, identical to mine. We had drafted them together, not just as an answer to Brent's attacks, as the next step in closing every door they thought was still open. Inside the small chamber, the property registrar reviewed the documents silently. When she reached the trust transfer notice, she blinked once, then again. "You moved the property out of your personal ownership last month," she said. I nodded. The home was placed into the Maple Terrace Community Trust on June 12th. "You retained full residential rights under a retained life estate clause," she said, scanning. "And the deed stipulates no direct heirs shall inherit it unless named individually." "That's correct," Leah replied. She placed the final sheet down. "That changes everything." It did. By placing the house in a trust, one Brent never knew existed, I removed it entirely from the equation. No inheritance, no contest, no claim. The trust was irrevocable. All future ownership rights would pass to a local housing preservation non-profit. I had secured my right to live in it as long as I breathed. After that, it would serve someone else. Brent and Kaylee hadn't just lost control of the house. They had been written out of its future altogether. At 9:15 a.m., the filing was finalized, time-stamped, sealed. Leah walked the original into the district clerk's archive room for backup logging. I didn't wait around for applause. At 10 o'clock a.m., I was back home, seated at the dining table, pulling out my older estate documents from the bottom drawer. I spread them out carefully, reviewing each one. The original will, the health directive, the outdated power of attorney. I began shredding them one by one. Then I pulled out the new documents, clean, finalized, notarized. Brent's name wasn't on a single page. Kaylee's didn't exist. I had replaced my executor with the director of the housing non-profit. I had reassigned my emergency medical agent to my old friend Dana, a retired nurse who had stood by me for 2 decades. I had listed my modest savings account under a new designation, the Maeve Hollis Grant for Elder Legal Aid. Let them fight over a pile of ashes. At 11 o'clock a.m., I received an email from Evan. His bank's legal division had filed a formal fraud report with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. The routing information from the Breakmont Group account had triggered internal risk protocols. Brent and Kaylee's access had been frozen indefinitely. No appeals, no workaround. At 11:47 a.m., Kaylee tried to call me. I let it ring. She called again at noon, this time from a different number. I silenced the call and saved the voicemail. Her voice was breaking, but not from regret. From rage. From the weight of realizing she had played the wrong hand too long. By 12:30 p.m., I had everything boxed, every file, every printout, every legal notice sorted and labeled. One copy stayed in the home. One went to the attorney. One into the hands of Leah. No detail was left to chance. At 1 p.m., I opened the side drawer in the living room cabinet. Inside was the only object I had kept from Brent's childhood, a hand-drawn picture of us standing in front of the house. His handwriting misspelled my name. It had hung on the fridge for years. I folded it once, placed it in an envelope, and tucked it in the back of the same box that now held his last apology letter from 5 years ago. By 2 p.m., I walked the new estate plan down to the notary's office and had every signature recertified, one by one. Quiet, clean, binding. At 3:15 p.m., Leah texted, "Press is asking for a follow-up. They want to know what changed." "Nothing changed," I replied. "I just decided to stop asking for fairness and started building it myself." At 4 p.m., I received confirmation from the non-profit. They had accepted the trust. A small brass plaque would eventually be placed at the front gate after I passed. It would say, "This home sheltered someone who refused to be erased." At 5 p.m., I received an anonymous message, a screenshot. Brent, standing outside a commercial property, arguing with a man in a suit. The caption was simple: "Investors want their money back." At 5:20 p.m., the final knock came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was Brent. He stood on the porch with both hands in his pockets, eyes sunken, hair disheveled. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "You filed the trust," he said. "I did," I said. "Weeks ago." "You wrote me out." "I didn't write you out. You did." He looked past me into the hall, like he expected the house to feel different now that it no longer belonged to him. But nothing had changed. Not really. "I made mistakes," he muttered. "You made decisions." He looked down. "You're really not leaving anything?" "No," I said. "Not money, not land. What you chose to take from me was never yours to begin with. I'm simply correcting the record." He nodded, but it wasn't in agreement. It was in defeat. He turned without another word and walked down the steps. As he reached the sidewalk, I spoke. "You had a future here, but you wanted control more than connection. Now you have neither." He didn't turn back. I didn't expect him to. By 6 p.m., the sun was fading behind the oaks. I stood at the back window and looked out at the small patch of garden that had somehow survived every drought and every winter. It kept growing. No permission, no applause. And now, so would I. I had spent the entire night going through the documents Ashby had helped me compile. Every receipt, contract, and financial report was laid out on my dining table like a war map. My house felt like Command Central, the battlefield now clear in front of me. Morning came. I dressed carefully. No pearls, no soft cardigans. Today I wore my late husband's old navy blazer, one that still held the scent of salt air and tobacco. It made me feel armored. When I arrived at Jeffrey's house, Darla opened the door. She froze when she saw me. I could see her eyes scanning me top to bottom, expecting I'd come with apologies or soft words. But there was nothing soft about today. Inside, the dining table was already set, white wine chilled, steak resting, rosemary bread on a cutting board. They had gone all out. Brendan was there too. He looked smug. Jeffrey stood at the head of the table like a corporate CEO, smiling a little too wide. I took a seat across from them without a word. Darla handed me a folded document, her voice chipper like a kindergarten teacher. She called it a proposed business succession agreement. I didn't blink. I let her speak. She explained how they wanted to consolidate the airport restaurant assets under a new LLC, with Jeffrey listed as majority shareholder. Darla would serve as CFO. Brendan would head marketing. I was to be given the honorary title of founder and receive a small monthly stipend. A retirement thank you, she called it. I opened the folder slowly. I didn't rush. I wanted to savor this moment. Every clause was worse than the last. They were offering me nothing short of exile. My name would be used for branding, but I would have no legal ownership. The stipend was insulting. No control, no voting rights, just a ceremonial ghost in the corner. They mistook my silence for consent. Jeffrey leaned in, smiling. He told me how much they appreciated everything I had done, that it was time for the next generation to take the helm, that my time had come to rest. Brendan added that I'd be a legacy face to the public. They planned to shoot a video campaign highlighting me as the visionary founder. Darla called it touching. Then she said the words that flipped the switch in me. She said I'd be safer this way, less burden, no risk of public embarrassment if anything went wrong under my name. That was it. That was the knife. I straightened my back. I told them I had something to announce before signing anything. I pulled out the sealed envelope from my purse and handed it to Jeffrey. He opened it. His expression shifted. I saw his brow crease. Darla leaned over to read. Her face drained of colour. The paper inside detailed a full transfer of the restaurant group's trademarks, properties, and copyrights into a new non-profit foundation, the Lorraine Madsen Aviation Hospitality Trust, effective immediately. They thought it was a bluff. I could see the flicker of confusion on Jeffrey's face, then disbelief. I pulled out the second folder. Inside was a copy of the notarized filing, witnessed by Ashby, processed 2 days ago. It was legal, final, irreversible. Darla asked me if I knew what I had done. Her voice brittle. I told her I knew exactly what I'd done. I had transferred every location, every trademark, every supply contract, even the rights to my recipes and logos, into a public trust. The trust's mission was to support training, mentorship, and employment for women over 50 in aviation hospitality. From ticketing to catering to logistics. The board would be led by women I had worked with over the years. Not family, not blood. Loyalty built over sweat and dignity. Jeffrey stood up. His voice was lower now, calculating. He asked what that meant for him, for their roles. I told him there were no roles, no jobs waiting. The board would be hiring from the open market. Applications welcome. Brendan muttered something under his breath. Darla looked like she'd just swallowed vinegar. Then I told them what burned the most. Their LLC proposal had included a clause to sell 3 of the restaurant leases to a private investor group Darla's cousin worked for. I had reviewed it the night before. The cousin had intended to flip the properties and lease them to fast food chains. They had planned to gut the entire mission, turn legacy into profit. I asked them if they really thought I'd spend 40 years building something just to have it turned into a greasy chicken franchise. Jeffrey finally spoke clearly. He said I had gone too far, that this was a betrayal. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "No. Betrayal is showing up to your mother's house with a pre-written contract to cut her out of everything she built." He said I couldn't do this, that the family would never forgive me. I said the family had already erased me. They just didn't know I had noticed. Darla whispered that this wasn't fair, that they had worked hard too. I told her working hard isn't the same as working honest. Then I stood up. I took the folder with me. I left the wine untouched, the steak uneaten. On my way out, Brendan followed me. He asked if there was anything he could do, if there was still a place for him. I looked at him. I told him the applications open next month. But he better come with more than a flashy suit and a surname. The board didn't play favourites. That night, I returned home. I sat on my porch with a warm cup of coffee and the sound of jets overhead. For the first time in years, I felt the kind of calm that doesn't need permission. I didn't lose anything that day. I reclaimed it, all of it. What they thought was a dinner to take control became the moment they realized they never had it in the first place, and I was done pretending otherwise. The silence around the table was a vacuum. Even the silverware resting on folded napkins seemed to hold its breath. I watched Brendan lower his wineglass slowly, his smile vanishing before it could settle. Kayla blinked, then turned toward him, waiting for him to say something. Anything. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I let the weight of my words hang in the air like a judge's gavel already dropped. I saw the disbelief churn in Brendan's eyes, then the calculation, then the panic. It was beautiful. McClellan leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed, the calmest person in the room. He knew exactly what I had done, and he had signed off on every part of it. Across from him, Ashby folded her arms gently and nodded, as if confirming a verdict. Brendan tried to speak. Nothing came out at first. Then his voice returned in a cracked whisper. You are transferring everything to a non-profit, to strangers, to the damn airport, to your employees. You are giving away my inheritance. I looked at him. Then I corrected him. Not yours. Never was. You assumed. Kayla stood up too fast. Her chair clattered. The baby monitor clipped to her dress strap fell to the floor with a soft thud, unnoticed. Her voice rose with trembling urgency. This is a joke. Some stunt. You cannot do that. We were promised. You told Jeffrey this would all pass to him. We sacrificed everything for him to build this legacy. For you. For this. Her fingers were shaking. I held her gaze. You sacrificed nothing. You took. You pushed. You undermined every step your husband made with me. You told him he deserved more. That I owed him. That I owed both of you. And he believed you. He poisoned himself with entitlement. You turned him into someone who stole my name off a building without telling me. Brendan's fists clenched. This is betrayal. I smiled slightly. No, this is correction. He stepped forward, his face reddening. You are throwing away generations of wealth for what? For petty revenge. You think giving everything to some janitors and TSA clerks will make you feel good. This is insane. This is public suicide. My voice was even, quiet, final. No. This is legacy. True legacy. Not just assets, not names carved in stone. I built this chain for people who work for a living, who earn their stripes. Not for people like you, who hoard expectation and call it destiny. Kayla looked like she might cry, but she didn't. She was too proud. Instead, she glared at me with something darker than rage, something sharp, calculating. You think this ends here? You think a signature scares us? We will challenge this. Every clause, every penny. We'll drag your name through every court in the state. You won't have peace. You won't have anything left when we're done. Ashby stood, her tone cutting through the room like glass. You would be wise to read the terms before making threats. The transfer has already gone into effect. The new foundation has legal standing. The business valuation was completed. IRS filings submitted. There is no loophole. Your name is not on a single contract. You were never entitled. Brendan stared at her like she had just spoken another language. I saw the last of the illusion crack across his expression. Kayla turned on McClellan next. And you encouraged this. You stood by while she threw us out. You're just a smiling corpse who likes the spotlight. Why are you even here? McClellan's smile remained, patient and untouched. Because I built my life on supporting women who stop waiting for permission. I knew Lorraine when she was the only woman in a room full of corporate suits. I watched her feed their egos to survive. I watched her rise. I told her never to apologize for getting louder. And now I'm here to witness the moment she finally stopped asking for approval. Brendan pounded his fist on the table. The wine bottle tipped, rolled, but didn't spill. He looked like a man watching his own kingdom slip into the ocean. You don't get to rewrite the rules like this. You don't get to erase me from your life. I'm your son. That word hung in the air. I stood slowly. You are a man who used to be my son. Then you decided I was just a vehicle, a source, an ATM. I didn't leave you. You abandoned me the moment you thought I was in your way. And now I'm not. I've stepped aside. I've cleared the path. But it doesn't lead to the throne you expected. It leads to the people who earned it. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the sound of distant silverware in the next dining room. The quiet clink of glasses, the faint laughter of strangers untouched by betrayal. Brendan grabbed his coat and stormed toward the exit. Kayla followed. No one stopped them. Not even the waitstaff acknowledged them. They walked out of their own fantasy, like actors being written out in real time. Ashby gathered her files. McClellan raised his glass to me with a soft smile. Congratulations, Lorraine. You just did what most people only dream of doing. You set the record straight. I sat down again. Not because I was tired, but because I had nothing left to prove. My hands were steady, my breath calm. The noise was gone. I had not destroyed anything. I had set it free. The restaurant returned to its hum. The candles flickered gently. Outside, the night was clean and quiet. And in that quiet, for the first time in years, I finally heard peace. Not the kind bought by silence or fear, but the kind earned by walking straight through fire and stepping out whole. It had taken a lifetime to reach that table, and it had taken everything to leave it like this. But I had done it, and I wasn't done yet. The courtroom was packed tighter than a Thanksgiving dining room. News cameras rolled from the back. The judge tapped his gavel to settle the tension, and Brendan sat in the defendant's chair, lips tight, hair slicked back, wearing that same smug confidence he used to throw around the dinner table. I didn't flinch. The prosecutor opened with a calm but cutting tone, reading aloud the list of assets Brendan had transferred under my name without consent. It wasn't just the vineyard or the mineral rights. It was the credit lines, the fabricated signatures, the unauthorized loan application for a $2 million expansion on the west lot, using me as collateral. My name. My legacy. I looked over and caught a glimpse of Kayla seated behind him. She wore a muted green blouse, hands folded in her lap, expression unreadable. But not once did she meet my eyes. The first witness was Martina. Dignified as ever, she stepped forward with her notebook of documented timestamps, email logs, and security footage from the farm office. One by one, she outlined the digital trail Brendan had left behind, how he'd forged my e-signature using a software called Signify Pro, which, thanks to her digging, had already been subpoenaed. Martina held up a printed screenshot of the dashboard. Every login from Brendan's IP, every access time. The audience gasped. I leaned back, calm. The truth, at last, was louder than their lies. The defense tried to interrupt. They claimed it was a family misunderstanding, a matter of poor communication, that Brendan had been managing the property with verbal consent from his mother, that it was simply a case of misfiled paperwork. But then came the footage. The projector whirred, and the courtroom dimmed as a clip from 3 weeks ago played. Brendan stood in my private study, whispering into his phone. The audio was grainy but clear enough. He said, "If she ever finds out what I pulled with the mineral contract, I'll just say she's confused. I'll bring up her medication again. I didn't blink. The jury did. A collective silence settled like a curtain falling over the room. Next, the lawyer brought up the updated will, signed, notarized, and submitted to the county office just days before Brendan tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. The notary was called in. She testified that I was lucid, thorough, and completely aware of every clause, especially the one that transferred voting rights over the estate to a charitable trust if my mental health was ever challenged without merit. And Brendan had walked right into that clause, blind and greedy. At that point, his posture changed, shoulders curled inward, one hand gripping the side of the table. His lawyer whispered furiously beside him, but the unraveling had begun. I looked down briefly at my lap, where I clutched a folded piece of paper. It wasn't evidence, just something I kept with me. A letter from my late husband, written long ago, reminding me that a family name meant nothing without honor behind it. I had nearly forgotten that truth. Nearly. Kayla was called next. I expected defiance, maybe tears, but instead, she walked stiffly to the stand, not looking at anyone. She admitted to witnessing Brendan's handling of my finances. She admitted to knowing about the hidden accounts. She tried to claim she didn't participate directly, that she was manipulated too. But the prosecutor had prepared for that. A second recording was played, a phone call between her and Brendan, recovered from a backup cloud account tied to her phone. In it, she laughed and said, "Just tell your mom she misremembered. At her age, it won't be hard to spin it." That laugh. It was cold, and it chilled the entire room. No one spoke when the video ended, not even Kayla. The defense rested early, clearly scrambling. Their argument had crumbled. Every lie, every manipulation had been brought into the light. Then the judge turned to me. He asked if I had any final statement before the verdict. I stood slowly. My knees trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of it all. I spoke calmly. I said I never wanted this. I raised my son with love, with hope, with the belief that integrity mattered more than inheritance, that family meant loyalty, not control. But when silence becomes permission, and love becomes leverage, a mother has no choice but to stand. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for pity. I simply told the truth. The judge nodded. The jury was dismissed for deliberation. 30 minutes later, they returned. Guilty, on all counts, fraud, elder abuse, forgery, identity theft, financial coercion. The sentence would be handed down the next day, but the message was already clear. Brendan didn't look at me when the verdict was read. He stared ahead, jaw clenched. Kayla, once so full of rehearsed charm, collapsed into herself. And I felt no joy, no gloating, only something quieter. Peace. As I stepped out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed, flashbulbs popped, microphones shoved toward me. I kept walking. Martina waited by the curb with her car idling. She didn't say anything, just opened the door and gave me a look that said everything. It was done. Not revenge. Justice. And as we drove back to the ranch, I watched the sky shift to dusk, colors softening above the vineyard hills. Tomorrow, I would wake up not as the woman betrayed, but as the woman who chose to rise. I stood near the steps of the courthouse as the early morning sun cut through the cold. The stone beneath my feet held the weight of every decision I had made in the last 6 months. A part of me expected to feel vindicated, triumphant, maybe. But as I watched Brendan and Kayla being led out by 2 officers, wrists cuffed, heads low, the feeling that washed over me was not glee. It was a quiet, bittersweet calm. The courtroom had emptied, but the echoes still rang. Kayla had broken down when the judge announced the charges: falsifying documents, wire fraud, elder abuse. Brendan tried to hold it together, but his jaw trembled. Neither of them had expected it to go this far. Maybe they thought I would drop everything once I saw them scared. Maybe they assumed I would cave. Again. But this time I didn't. Judge Halbert's voice had been clear, measured. His words carried more than justice. They carried consequence. And after all the manipulation, the backroom schemes, the lies written into legalese, this was the chapter where truth stood taller than power. Back at the house, Martina waited. She had watched the proceedings quietly, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder through most of it. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't need them. When we reached the garden bench, she passed me a thermos of coffee and said nothing. That silence held more kindness than 1,000 empty apologies. The irony was, I never wanted this war. I only wanted to be respected, to be part of my own life, to not be erased. Instead, I was forced to fight for the very right to exist within my family. The trust had been sealed, the community fund was officially launched, its first initiative, a training and wellness program for single women over 50 looking to rebuild their lives after emotional or financial abandonment. We named it after my mother, Evelyn's home. It was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming what should never have been stolen in the first place. My voice, my place, my peace. 2 weeks after the verdict, I received a letter from Brendan, handwritten, a strange sight in his cursive, clumsy from years of typing. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't try to justify. He simply wrote that he remembered the sound of my laugh when he was 10, the way I used to hum while folding laundry, and the blue bowl I always used for peach cobbler. He said he didn't know when things turned, that maybe they never really turned at all. They just slowly drifted, and he never noticed until I was no longer on his side. I read that letter 5 times. Then I put it away, not to forget, but because I had already made peace with the part of me that had been grieving for years. One morning, while trimming the hedges by the east fence, I noticed the boy next door watching. He must have been 7, maybe 8. He was sitting cross-legged on his porch, a battered notebook in his lap. He asked me what kind of flowers I was planting. I told him they were lavender. He asked what they were for. I told him they reminded me that things can grow even in soil that's been mistreated. He blinked, wrote that down, and said, "That sounds like something for a book." I smiled. Maybe someday someone will write my story. Maybe not. But that little boy would grow up knowing a woman who didn't stay quiet when silence became a weapon. As summer neared, the house felt less like a battlefield. Martina had painted the old guest room in warm gold and hung up curtains I never knew I had. We cooked more, laughed often. The phone rang less. That was a blessing. Kayla filed an appeal. I didn't contest it. I had no appetite for further fights. The system would do what it did. My part in it was done. At dusk, I walked the trail behind the garden and let my hand brush against the tall grasses. Fireflies blinked gently. In the distance, someone was playing an old hymn on a piano with a few notes out of tune. I thought of all the things I had lost, and all the things I had not. My dignity, my name, my power to decide what mattered. In the end, justice had not been loud. It had not arrived with fury or spectacle. It had simply come like the tide, steady and sure, and it left behind a shoreline clean enough for me to walk barefoot again. I didn't forgive them because they asked. I forgave them because the anger had taken enough from me already, and I had more life to live, not for their approval, not for their love, but for mine. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice after being silenced by those closest to you? If Evelyn's story reminded you of something from your own life, I'd love to hear it. Healing often begins with one shared truth. Let this space be a safe one.